Exodus 2. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sisters stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the river bank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slaves to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were, and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" Reuel asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man, who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them.
I mentioned it is actually a continuation of the first book, Genesis, where the writer Moses, as I told you, wrote about God's creation, and then he talks about how God promised Abraham that he will be a great nation, and then the people of the descendants of Abraham, Jacob and his sons, eventually went into Egypt. And then they survived well initially, and after 430 years, there was a new Pharaoh who became king of Egypt, and he had no idea of the contributions of Joseph and his brothers. And the king of Egypt oppressed the Jews into slavery. And in Exodus, we are told the Jews cried out to God, and God delivered them. So that's the story. And how do you know it's a continuation? Because in the Hebrew, I mentioned in verse 1, these are the names of the sons of Israel. It actually begins, and these are the sons. These are the names of the sons. We are told by our English teachers, never start a sentence with and. So the English translation, they take out the word and. It actually reduces, it takes away some meaningful, is a very meaningful word, because and tells you it's a continuation. Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 50 and Exodus chapter 1 is linked together. So the word "and" tells us it's connected to the first book. There are other connections I mentioned last week, like for example, Genesis chapter 46, verses 8 to 27. When we look at Genesis 46, we have, these are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt. Reuben, the firstborn, all the way to verse 26, 27, or 26. All those who went to Egypt with Jacob, numbered 66 persons, with the two sons and so on, were 70 in all. Okay, verse 27, Genesis 46. So this passage tells us, I am continuing the story of Jacob and his descendants. 70 of them went to Egypt. So verse 1 says, and these are the names of those who went to Egypt. And then in verse 5, they numbered 70 in all. So it's a continuation. The second evidence and hint of continuation is in verse 7. But the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied greatly and became exceedingly numerous. And then in verse 9, look, the king of Egypt says, the Israelites have become much too numerous for us. Now this is a promise of God in a way to Adam, and a command to Adam and Eve. And we told you in Genesis chapter 1 verse 28, God says to Adam and Eve, go forth and multiply. Okay, be numerous, fill the earth, multiply and fill the earth. So it's a command and a promise to Adam and Eve. And so the Jews have seen this, that even as they were oppressed by God, they have been, okay, even as they have been oppressed by God, they have been blessed. And there is a lot of multiplication. Okay, so Genesis 1:28 and Genesis 9:1, God tells Noah again after the flood, go forth and multiply and fill the earth. Okay, so that's a reference back to Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 9. Now, then I mentioned too, Genesis 12 was a promise to Abraham. And that promise to Abraham was that he will be a great nation. And all those who bless you will be blessed, and all those who curse you will be cursed. So now Abraham is a great nation, because by the time we look in Exodus chapter 2, we will see that 600,000 people left Egypt. And these 600,000 were just counting the men, not counting women and children. So some scholars think that at least 2 million people left Egypt. So from 70 people, they have become 2 million. They have been very prosperous, and as promised to Abraham, now he is a great nation. His descendants number 2 million people. That's a big nation, a big country in those days. So a promise to Adam, a promise to Abraham. And Genesis 50 verse 24, which is just the page before that. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid. Then you must carry my bones up from this place. So Joseph died at the age of 110. So this goes back to Genesis 15. The book of Exodus says that when the people of Israel left Egypt, they brought along the bones of Joseph as he had made them promise to do 430 years ago before that. So there is a continuation of the story. Joseph had told them, one day you will need help from God, and God will bring you out of Egypt. When you do that, remember to carry my bones back to the promised land. Because Joseph died not seeing the land that God had promised, but knowing that God will keep his promise to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, that they will have a promised land given to them. I have not shown you this verse last week, Let's turn now to Genesis 15 and we see what is the promise in Genesis 15. Or perhaps not so much a promise, but perhaps you might see that as a very, very strange verse. And tonight I want to talk about this very strange verse. Genesis chapter 15, verse 18.
Genesis 15:18. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, "To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates."
Chapter 17, Genesis, verses 4 to 8.
Genesis 17:4-8. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you, for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you, the whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner. I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God.
Of the promise in Genesis 12, greater detail in Genesis 15 and 17, God says to Abraham, I will make your descendants numerous. I will give you a land, Canaan. That is the land I promised to you. You will move there and you will live there and you will become a nation there. And then back to Genesis 15. This is a strange verse I want to talk about. Genesis 15 verses 13 to 16. Okay, remember.
Genesis 15:13-16. Then the Lord said to him, "Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure."
So here you have in Genesis 12, Abraham is called out, and his name was Abram at that time. He was called out from a land called Mesopotamia. Today we call it Mesopotamia. And God says, come out and I will show you a land. And God didn't tell him where yet. And then in Genesis 15, God tells him that piece of land I'm going to give you is called Canaan. Or in the Hebrew, is Canaan. And it doesn't matter how we pronounce it. In Canada, it's become an English word and it's pronounced Canaan. So Canaan is the land I'm going to give you. And however, at this moment, when he's talking in Genesis 15 to Abram, Abram is in the land of Canaan already. But God is telling him, you will move to another place. Your descendants will, for 400 years, be in another place. Then they will become slaves. And then I will deliver you. And the reason is, verse 16, because the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. So here, don't you think it's strange? What is strange? God promises Abraham, I'm going to give you a big land, big piece of land, and I'm going to fill this land with your descendants, lots and lots of them. But first, you will need to go and suffer as slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and then I will deliver you. So, Exodus is about the delivery. Genesis is about how God made all these promises that will be fulfilled in Exodus. So what's so strange? Why did God not say to Abraham, I give you this land, it will be yours. You won't need to fight for it. You won't need to do anything. You just go there, sit down, and a big palace will appear and you sit and live in it. God says, I'm going to give this land to you. But before you get it, you're going to suffer. Today, many people who read the Bible say, hey, or even they don't read the Bible, but they say, God, if there is a God and this God is love, then I shouldn't suffer. If God loves me, I shouldn't suffer. If I suffer, it means God doesn't love me. So there is a big problem today where people connect suffering as something bad, which is most of the time is true, right? Suffering is bad. So if you love me, God, you are my Father, Heavenly Father, then you shouldn't let me suffer. And if I'm suffering, either you don't exist or you don't love me. Have you ever met people like that who say, I don't believe in God because I'm suffering too much. If God is love, like you say, then I shouldn't be suffering. And because I'm suffering, either He doesn't love me or there's no God. So don't talk nonsense to me. That kind of attitude and that kind of belief is destroyed right here in this verse. Where before Abraham obtains the promise and the blessing that God will give him, God says, you will suffer. Well, you yourself, God says to Abraham, you yourself will die in a ripe old age. You will live in peace and you're a rich man and you will die, but your descendants are going to suffer for 400 years before they reach the promised land. So suffering was a promise in a sense. Some would say a condemnation. God condemned the Israelites to pain. That cannot be a loving God. Okay? So now I want to ask you, what do you think are the reasons God told the Israelites, before you get this blessing, you will suffer for 400 years? Why do you think that was God's, in a sense, condition?
Through suffering, the Israelites will learn very valuable lessons, like how to treat the people, other people, like even foreigners, because they will be the slaves, right? So slaves, right?
Very good. You will suffer as slaves, then you will learn never to make somebody else a slave. Because you have experienced the pain. You will be, God called the Israelites to be a compassionate and loving people, and never to treat people that God created as things. When in Exodus 20, when we read the Ten Commandments, God says, you will keep the Sabbath day holy because you were slaves in Egypt. You had no rest, and I gave you rest. I delivered you from Egypt, and you finally had rest after 400 years. So now you understand the value of rest. So they learned valuable lessons, how to treat foreigners. What else did they learn?
Maybe it's because if someone gets something easily without any suffering, the person will never be thankful about that.
Appreciation, isn't it? Gratitude. If the iPhone 6 just came out, right? And I've read of young people who have saved a whole year of pocket money, and then they line up and be the first to buy the iPhone 6. And you save a whole year's pocket money to buy a phone that will be obsolete in 2 months. That is another value system I don't understand. But anyway, okay. If something is obtained because of some pain, you will appreciate it very deeply. Just like when I was when I was studying, doing my PhD in England, and English winter is not as cold, but it's miserable. It's dark and black and humid, all kinds of things. Yeah, terrible things. Because heating is no good in England, so you feel even colder because it's humid and the cold eats into your bones. And after a terrible winter, when the spring comes, oh, it's so lovely. Yeah, so you're right, Irene, that if you get something like nothing, then you won't appreciate it. If you didn't have to save one whole year for your iPhone, your father says to you, you need an iPhone, here's money for 2, go get it. You take your father as a ATM, right? Automatic teller machine. Tip, 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 my pin, pressing my pin, tip, 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 tip. Okay, money. So you won't appreciate anything. So yes, God wanted them to be grateful and appreciate what He will give them finally. And after they've gone through a period of winter, they know how bad winter can be, then they really appreciate the spring that God gives them. What else did they learn?
Obedience.
Obedience. How do you explain that?
Want the people to know who God is and to obey what Moses has said.
Obedience also is related to dependence. If I tell my daughter, do this, she would ask me, why? Young people today always do that. Your parents ask you to do something, why? Yeah, maybe a teacher's teach you to ask why. So everything before you do it, why? Now, if you are about to fall off a cliff and I say to my daughter, my name is Pawan, Pawan, stop! She turns around, why? And boom. It's too late to ask why. You're already falling over the cliff. So, from very young, I taught my daughter, I trained her in a way. When I say stop, you stop, because it could be on the edge of a cliff and I saw it before you, and I say stop. You just stop, don't ask why. Okay? And God says, because if you want to be protected by me, I'm the God who can protect you. I can shelter you. I can let you soar on wings like eagles above the storm. But if you don't obey me, I say, spread your wings. He says, why? Then you drop. Yeah? So I think God needed them to learn to be dependent on Him, to obey Him. Of course, they still didn't obey after all the lessons. But anyway, that was, yes, a very good point. For 400 years, we are told the Jews, the Israelites, suffered from oppression and slavery. In Exodus chapter 2, finally after chapter 1 is over, chapter 2, and they cried out to God. For some reason, reading it, I think they have forgotten to ask God. And finally they realized, maybe sometimes when you have no more ability to help yourself, you have no more resources left, and there's nothing that will work. Finally you say, oh, nobody's going to help me. I have nothing left. Oh God, please help me. It's the last resort. And I think that was what God was waiting for. He waited for them for 400 years for them to finally say, God, I need you. I cannot help myself anymore. So we must not forget God. He's not the last resort. He should be the first resort. He should be the first person we go to when we need help, not the last person. What else did they learn?
To make them stronger.
You know, that is a very strange paradox. Adversity, trouble, makes us strong. I read a statement somewhere, I forgot where it was, maybe it's on the internet. Sometimes the internet does have some nice, wise words. You know, we said earlier on, a child would think, when a young child would think, if I am suffering pain, my father doesn't love me. My mother doesn't love me. My father and mother allowed me to have pain. And this writer says kindness is a parent who does not allow the child to suffer disappointment and pain. Kindness. We all want to be kind. We want to be kind mothers and fathers, mothers especially. We want to be kind to our children. We don't want them to suffer pain. We don't want them to be suffering disappointment. And one of the things I learned as a parent was I have to introduce my daughter to small pains and small disappointments. And this writer says something like that. He says, kindness is a parent not allowing a child to suffer disappointment and pain. But love is allowing the child to suffer a little and be disappointed a little so that she can face life for real. Life for real is painful. Life for real is disappointment after disappointment, sorrow after sorrow. A loving parent will never shield the child from pain and suffering. We don't say to a child, the baby learning to walk, boom, and then, oh, it's so painful. Okay, don't walk anymore, okay? Don't walk, I will carry you everywhere. Have you seen a parent do that? No. Because we know the child must fall and be hurt, and we cry with the child, but the child must still fall again until the child is finally strong enough to walk on his own. Then he or she is ready to face life. A loving parent must allow pain in the child's life. A kind parent doesn't. But the irony is the kind parent actually makes the child suffer even more. Spoil the child. Real life. In my church in Singapore, we had to help one man who came to our church one day. 50 years old. His parents had left him large sum of money. Very rich parents, left him a lot of money. He didn't have to work a single day in his life. And of course, he never bothered to study. I've got all the money, I don't need to study. What do you study for? To get a job? I don't need a job. At 50, his money ran out. No more money. Came to us for help. I looked for a job for him. I got him a job. He says, no, I don't like this job. I want a job in an air-conditioned office. I want to sit at a table. I don't want to clean tables. Don't want to clean floors. I don't want to be a cleaner. I don't want to be a laborer. A lot of things. He's never worked a single day in his life. He doesn't know how to work. And he's got no education. So what else can he do except be a cleaner? Or something like that, a laborer. So he was not realistic, even at 50 years old. No more money. And his apartment was so smelly and dirty, we had to go in and clean it for him. And 3 months later, it was dirty and smelly again. He did not know how to clean up his house. Because in his parents' house, he didn't have to lift a hand. People clean up for him, clean up after him, clean up before him. So it was so sad. When you become parents, remember this. And if you are a child, remember this. Your parents love you. That's why you get disciplined. And God says the same thing in Hebrews chapter 12. In the New Testament, in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5, and all the way to verse 12.
And you have forgotten that word of encouragement that addresses you as sons. My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes everyone he accepts as a son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as sons. For what son is not disciplined by his father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are illegitimate children and not true sons. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. how much more should we submit to the Father of our spirits and live? Our fathers disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees.
Strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. God's word tells us God's discipline strengthens us. Adversity leads us to be strong. It's very true in my whole life. When I was successful, I was doing well in school, I expected to get a scholarship. And, if I had got a scholarship, my life would have been just success upon success, and I would never have found God. But because I did not do that well in my high school exams, and I didn't get the scholarships I wanted, I had to, instead of joining the university, my parents didn't have enough money, I had to join the army to get work, get paid, to save up money to go to the university. So of course I valued university a lot, because I had to work for it. But actually, the biggest thing that happened to me was, before that, I was so dependent on my cleverness. I used to top my class, I expect to get scholarship, and I didn't, and I was bitter, I was angry, I was miserable, and I went into the army and I was bullied, I was punished, and I was disciplined, and I hated it. But it was in the army when I was down at the very bottom of my life. I could only look up because I'm right at the bottom. And I said, God, where are you? It was only when I was in adversity that I finally thought about God and said, God, I need you. Who are you? Actually, I didn't know who God was. I just said, if you are there, God, I need you now. I need you to clean up my messed up life. I need you to make me, put me at peace and take away my bitterness and my anger and my misery. I hate everybody. I hate everything. And actually, when I was asking God, I said, God, I do not know who you are. I then remembered that I had friends who said, God is Jesus Christ. And I said, God, if you are Jesus Christ, I want you to prove yourself to me. Today, I wouldn't dare to be so cheeky, but I was really like, okay, I don't know who you are, but I don't believe you're Jesus Christ. If you are Jesus Christ, prove yourself to me. I was 21. And of course, now I'm a little bit above 21. At 23. I have been a Christian for nearly 40 years now. I've never regretted the 40 years. The peace and the joy and the strength that God gave me. So I would say that, I think God wanted the people of Israel to be strong, to depend on Him, to trust Him. See, when I say to my daughter, stop, she stops because she trusts me. She knows that she's in danger, but she doesn't know what's the danger. But she stops. And then she says, why? And I said, you're standing on a cliff. You're about to fall. And she trusts me. And today she's 27 and she still trusts me. Even though we're so far away, she's in trouble. She'll WhatsApp me, message me, and we can talk, Skype and all that. So that's the way with human beings, as Hebrew says. If your father, your human father, can love you and discipline you in that love, all the more God will love you more and discipline you so that you will be strong and you will depend on Him and you will have real strength like the eagle who just soars on the winds and on the heat currents that God creates. Any other reasons why God wanted Israel to go through slavery?